TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Welcome to a special episode here that we've got on the channel. It's our friend Pete Flynn, who's been on the channel a couple of times. He's becoming a veteran on the channel, but certainly won't be the last time that you're on the channel, Pete.
Well, good. We got plenty. We always have plenty to talk about, don't we?
Yeah, we certainly do, and we appreciate you giving some time from your busy schedule to pop on and talk to us a little bit about what you've been doing behind the scenes, and also your pickup business as well, but also in particular the tribute band that you're a key member of. So we look forward to talking about that, and I'll isolate that wonderful t-shirt soon. Just a couple of things that we want to make clear to people now at the beginning of the show. If you're watching on replay, you'll see there we've got a banner of Pete's website. If you can check that out, please, and go and follow him. And during the course of the show, I'll include his Facebook account as well, and you can go and check him out over there. And I also think too, Pete, I'll put your account, your website account there in the comments. So if you are watching, please go and follow him. Go and check out what Pete's doing, because Pete, like a lot of us, you use social media, and that's great. I'm always keen to see what you've got to do on your social media links, bro.
It's the only way to go in this day and age. So yeah, I mean, I've got the social media for myself, which I share all, whether it's the Tom Petty Tribute Band, Petty Union, or my pickups, or, whatever's happening at home in the studio here, on the bench, if I'm working on something really unusual or, historic piece that's come through. There's just, everything's about. It's not just about promoting, and it's really, I've been in this business, in my 43rd year. It's like, it's really about sharing, because I know so many collectors and stuff over the years, that it's just some of these guitars and some of their memories, they go and evolve or whatever, and it's never shared. And like, what's the sense? It's just, you got to share. That's what it's about. Gives us all.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Pete. It's about sharing, but I'm going to also just extend that wonderful observation of yours a little bit further. Since that global thing that happened in 2020, where a lot of us were kind of forced to sort of spend a lot more time on social media, including our channel, I think we realized because of that social media was actually quite good. If you found some platforms that you worked with really, really well, and you found some channels or some people to follow, it was pretty exciting, because before that, we probably weren't doing it a lot, from my perspective anyway, Pete.
No, I agree, and I was even given guitar lessons online. So, and and they're still on my Facebook page too. So, just again, trying to share some of the experiences, I had when I was working with Dean Zielinski at Dean Zielinski Guitars, DeanZielinskiGuitars.com. And, I was working with artists like Johnny Winter and what have you. But Johnny, had, when we were hanging out, when I finally got to meet Johnny, and he's showing us how he played Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, because of course the first time that was recorded was with Rick Derringer, when Rick was in his band Johnny Winter, and So I thought, well, this is cool, you know. So we actually had a little video of Johnny doing it and showing us how he did it, which was almost the harmony guitar parts to what Rick was doing it, even when Johnny was doing it as a solo artist. So, you know, I had actually recorded both versions, the Johnny Winter version, and then a little later on during the pandemic, I did the Derringer one. So that's what's cool, you know, because I'd met Rick several times too. And again, it's just like, all right, I got that knowledge. Oh, okay, great. It's good up here. What does it, you know, if you're not sharing it, what good is it? So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, 100%. And I, I'm sure also too, it's this unselfish aspect that we have that might be a reflection of the music that we love, and that's been a big part of our lives too, Pete. You know, it's this thing of sharing, and that's what we do on this channel. You know, it's sharing the love of the music that we have with other people, and you know, getting comments from people going, wow, we never knew that, you know, or wow, isn't it great to meet to hang out with some dudes that just live and breathe this kind of music that, you know, you and I are going to spend the next hour and a half talking about.
No, you said it. It is a privilege. I mean, you know, so if
Yeah,
I'm hanging out with Rick Derringer
yeah,
and or Johnny or whatever, you know, it's just like
yeah,
nobody else is like, you know, you got to look back and reflect and
yeah,
really be thankful of these incredible experiences you have. And you know, to this day, I try not to take any of it for granted. When I'm doing a gig, you know, we did a gig last night in Chicago at
yeah.
Ribfest, and it was people as far as you could see. You know, it's just a sea of
Wow.
people, and it's like I really, especially at this age, and I've been doing this, you know, 49 years. I've been playing out live,
Yeah,
um, and it's like I just really try to look around the stage at my cohorts, all my bandmates, and not take any of it for granted because could be your last show, you know. So you've
yeah.
really got to appreciate what you've been handed.
Yeah. And again, that's a great point. And I just want to echo one thing too that's related to exactly what we've been talking about. You know, Mike Campbell, who you and I, you know, adore. I'm going to use that word, adore, and clearly you do too. And we've spoken already about his wonderful autobiography that's available, and it's one that I thoroughly recommend people go and buy in any, if not all, the formats, and support him that way. But you know, Mike Campbell took advantage of social media too, didn't he? You know, during that global thing,
Yeah,
and
that was eating it up.
yeah, me too. Yeah. You know, he was grabbing different guitars and he was talking about, you know, different guitars and, you know, the memories and some of the key significant things that happen with that guitar. And like, I'm sure, like me, you and thousands of other people were saying, why don't you write a book, Mike?
Yeah, well, right, because it's like, all right, you know, it was whatever the 5 minute Mike Campbell segment, and you're waiting for the
Yeah.
next one. You're waiting for the next one. You know, so yeah, you know, so he dared to share, you know, his whole life story, and it's pretty darn incredible. Certainly a great read.
Oh, oh, you know, I read a lot of music biography books, Pete, you
Yeah,
know, and I know you do too.
yeah,
And, you know, certainly over the last 10, 15 years, I've made a point of it. And sometimes I'll have three or four books I'm reading on the go at the same time. And it's possible to do, folks. Trust
yeah.
me.
I do it
It's,
too. I do it too. It's not easy.
it's possible to do, but and I'm going to rate Mike's biography in my top 5, maybe even my top 3, and I'll tell you, there's a couple of reasons why, Pete, and I'll be keen to hear what maybe some of your thoughts are. The attention to detail is just sublime in his book. right from the word go, the attention to detail. And I'm a reader who likes that history, that kind of archaeology, you know, that that the subject's giving you, to the point where he's telling you exactly how a song came about or a riff came about, Pete. And he describes, and we spoke about this briefly on one show that we did recently, you know, the chords. You know, he's describing American Woman, how the band came together, and that song defined the band moving forward. That was the one song. And I'm going, wow. And so I don't know about you, Pete. So I'm stopping that and I'm listening to American Woman. And I'm listening to it. I've listened to it a million times, and I'm listening to it after reading that going, the song just sounds so much better, Pete.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it gives, you know, again, when you've got the base, the platform where it started, and then you understand how all the parts came together to put the puzzle as a whole, it just makes you dive into the music that much more. And you're actually, as a listener, and sometimes not even as a musician, because we're all so good at picking things apart, but you can really start to hear the layers of what everybody's doing to make that signature sound. And it certainly, could they have done that without Stan Lynch or Ben Montench? And even if they weren't writers or what have you, everybody's part just makes it such the perfect whole. And that's the one thing that I really learned about the Tom Petty music, the experience, is that, you know, when I started this band, Petty Union, we're going at it 5 years now. There was what was on the internet, tablature and what have you. It was just all wrong. You know, it's just most people just doing their interpretation of it. So I had to transcribe all the Mike Campbell stuff.
Wow.
My ear, myself, it took about a year. And then I had to do all the Tom Petty parts. And in some songs, there's 3 guitar parts. As time went on, 5 guitar parts. You know, Jeff Lynne era, 7 guitar parts. Now you're adding piano, organ, you know, all this on top of it. So it really, when I went, and again, I was going back to when I started with this, I thought, oh, well, how difficult can this be? It's 4 or 5 chord pop music. Boy, was I wrong. You know, to your point, like American Girl, it's like there's so many layers, and the way these guys put it together, their simplicity is very complex. So yeah, it sounds easy. You know, it's like any good athlete or musician. You're like, well, they make that look so easy or sound so easy. Yeah, okay, then go try to replicate it. Not so easy. And I think that band as a whole is just a great example of, if you start listening and picking things apart, there's always a signature bass glissando or something going on. It's like, if you took that out of there, it's not the same song. It's not the same impact. And when we're playing shows, you know, like last night, again, everybody's singing along. People know this music for 40 some odd years. It's ingrained in the fabric of their lives, not just their memory. And they know it all. So if you're not replicating that stuff, they know. You can't fool them. So that's been the biggest part about this band for us, is that there's a lot of Tom Petty tribute bands, but they kind of take liberty with the material and kind of maybe do it their own way. And we don't do that. We play it note for note like the record. Maybe if we're doing an outro that, you know, a song faded off the record or something, and we have to do our own ending to it, we may extend a solo or something like that. But that's about it. But it is note for note, and everybody's on it, and they know all the little, you know, all those tiny little parts in there that most people don't hear. And again, until you're trying to replicate it, and if it's not there, you'll notice it. So yeah, it's just been quite an adventure, and you nailed it. I mean, those guys, American Girl, what have, I mean, that's on the first record. That's like the single. That's just like put them on the map. You know, it's pretty genius. It really is.
Look, again, I have to agree with everything that you've said, Pete. And I think one of the great things about this book too is, you know, I'm a guitar player, and you know, I appreciate what the keyboards and the organ has done in a lot of rock bands. You know, we rank albums regularly on our channel, Pete. So I've attuned myself over the last 5 years because we're doing that on a regular basis. And when you're hearing something 10 or 12 times during the week because you want to make some notes, you pick up on instruments that I would not normally pay attention to. But reading what Mike has to say about Ben Mont and his contribution to this band, I kind of took for granted. And again, you know, when you go back and listen to the music, and then what Mike Campbell has said about Ben Mont's contribution to that piece and the weaving. So when he said that I weave my guitar playing in with his keyboard playing, I'm going, that was like a penny dropping.
Right. Yeah. It's a perfect example. It's like bands, whether it's Wishbone Ash, Allman Brothers, everybody, you know, again, guitar players not trying to step on the other player and complement what they're doing or do a harmony.
Yeah.
Ben Mont was, you know, he was so key to all of that stuff because again, he has to figure out how to play complementary things to two guitar players, you know, Mike and Tom.
Yeah.
He was brilliant at that. Absolutely.
Yeah, phenomenal book, you know, and I'm sure you and I, you know, are going to make reference to that book more often than not when we talk about some other key things that you're going to be working on and other visits that you're going to have to the channel. But yeah, the attention to detail that Mike gives for a person like me, a reader like me. Don't get me wrong. I know there are probably some people out there who will criticize the amount of detail, and we read reviews where people talk about that, Pete, on books, and I'm going, are you mad?
Yeah.
Are you nuts? You're criticizing a book because it's giving too much detail?
Yeah, I think Mike, you know, and you can tell in the book, and you can tell in his personality, he's very humble. I mean, he doesn't just, I mean, he's constantly, I think, saying in the book, and this is what I took from it, is that, well, maybe I wasn't getting songwriting credit on this song or much more credit than he ever got. He was just saying, boy, I was so fortunate and lucky to be in this band. It's like, right?
Pete, 100% from page 1 to the last page. He know. It's a perfect contribution from a great guy. You're right. There's no bitterness. You know, he likes the fact early on that he was the buffer there for a while between the band and Tom, you know, only because he understood Tom probably a little bit more better as far as his personality goes, you know, where he talks about, you know, Tom could get angry quite quickly, you know, but that's not a criticism. That's a fact. Yeah. You know, that's a fact. And, you know, and how he early on, and this is the key point, Pete, and I like it when guys and girls write this in their books or if they're giving interviews and they talk about this, they say, I understood very clearly where my role was going to be in this partnership. You know, he was never going to be equal to Tom Petty. He knew that.
He knew it and he accepted it and he played his role.
Yeah.
So, and he could have butt heads. He could have. I think he certainly had a case for making it more than what he got or deserved. But you know, this is part of being in a band. You know, and this is why most bands just don't survive. You have all these personality issues, and most people, you know, there's always going to be some bullheaded person or a stronger personality, and it's really how you navigate that and deal with it. You know, my band's no different. You know, there's 7 of us, so it's a lot. You know, but I think we've all now, after 5 years, you know, have learned to accept each other. There's always been some static down the line, but this last year has been, I think, more pleasurable in that regard than ever before, because we all know who we are at this point, and we all accept it. And I think it just helps it makes better music. You're concentrating more on the music than anything else, and isn't that what it's about in the end?
Um, there's one question I'd like to ask you in relation to Tom Petty and Mike's book. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. You mentioned before, that there's so many rock bands, blues bands in the history of music where personalities have created major problems. The rock professor Simon, who is one of the co-hosts on this channel, he likes to use this reference now and again. The bass player wakes up one day and finds that the lead singer and the guitar player are living in 3 mansions around the world, and the bass player's still in the same house that he was in when the band started, and sort of scratches his head and tries to work out why. The bass player wasn't writing the songs, Pete. One of the reasons why I think they didn't have this issue in Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers is because early on the recording contract was always with Tom Petty, and everybody else was never going to be from a business perspective, a John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
Yeah, and I think that again that was accepted to a point, but when you look at, Mike Campbell was making reference to the fact that he's still living in this little ranch house, and then Tom's in a mansion now, and he's got a recording studio in the basement, and it's like, and Stan Lynch didn't, and Ron Blair didn't, and I think there was some problems with that, and again, in the end, by the time Stan Lynch had left, and these guys were gold record sellers and stuff. The rhythm section basically was they were broke. They just didn't make royalties and such. So I think that was a problem. And Stan Lynch's career only bloomed after he left the Heartbreakers and started working with people like Don Henley and songwriting. And that's where the money was. Mike Campbell actually, his big break was Boys of Summer for Don Henley. And when that came other opportunities for him to write songs for other people. And that's really what I think financially put him on the map for himself, not being in the Heartbreakers.
Yeah. 100%. And and obviously, Pete, there's lessons there for people who are forming bands and want to get into the music business too. Try and get your name on the contract.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why a lot of people are going at it by themselves. And look at Joe Bonamassa is a perfect example of a guy who just, forget about the record companies and the contracts. I'm just going to do it myself. And he's certainly done that himself. Records, promotion, everything is done in house. And that's in having the internet and podcasts and all that, social media, it certainly helps you to self-promote where you couldn't do that in the past. But the other thing is everybody nowadays jockeying for the same position. So there's way more competition in that regard too. So it's a double-edged sword. But yeah, you've got to, as we know now, if you're going to be on Spotify, you're going to make a half a cent, 1 million recordings. You're not going to make any money. You have to be out there touring. And that's what all the bands, this is what pulled Steely Dan and all these bands out of retirement. They couldn't sell records anymore. So you've got to go on the road. And that's what people are doing. So it's completely changed over the years too. You've got to be very persistent.
Yeah, 100%. And selling merchandise at gigs and, hard copies of CDs, and having vinyl at these gigs, all run by the bands or the acts themselves now. Big part of the business. That band Journey, they talk about that quite a lot, that all the money they make has been, through touring, and they're a hard-working touring band, Pete. They've got gigs all over the place, and it's not because they're selling albums.
Right. You're right. It's they have an audience and they have to keep selling themselves to the audience. Yeah.
And tickets to some of their gigs, if you want those close up seats, you're paying a premium, and at the end of the day too, I think if that's something that you want to do, all credit to you. But yeah, it's a great book. It's well worth reading, and the audio book, especially if you're busted for time and you can't read it on Kindle or on the analog version. Listen to it on audio, and Mike narrates it, which is even better. I like that. It's fantastic. We just got a couple of comments in here. Mark Moldawan's got 7 of your pickup sets already.
Hey, Mark. Mr. Texas, the Texas guitar player, Mark. Yes, he does. He's quite a supporter too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we've got Bob here in the chat. If you're going to take, you got to give. Exactly. Right. 100%, and I think that's one of the key things about fan-based platforms like what we do. Pete, right from the word go, when we started this channel, we said that we're just fans. None of us are pretending to be experts, and everything that we voice on this channel is just an opinion.
Yeah.
So,
no, again, it takes a community. So we're always, I'm always up for input. I mean, I only know what I know, so it only goes so far.
Yeah, 100%. And there's another comment here from Standing Stones 1776. Saw the original Allman Brothers for $3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, and you could see Jimi Hendrix for $2.50. So. Yeah. No, I think the Stones. I went to see the Stones last summer. It was $600 a ticket, and that was the nosebleed seats.
Yeah. Yeah. Cashing in, look, and rock and roll's always been a business, so
well, true, but here you got the Stones. They're so iconic. It's like I thought, well, this could be the last tour, right? I mean, they are 80 years old, so and Charlie Watts, God bless him, he's gone. So it's like, all of our favorite artists from the days gone by, unfortunately, they're gone. Rick Derringer just this last week, one of my all-time favorites. When I was a kid, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo on AM radio. It's just like, some of these artists and their music, and it touches your life in a certain way that it's a literal game changer. And Rick was like that for me. I mean, I think I've had 4 copies of All American Boy through my through the decades. Just one of my favorite, records. It's not just Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. It's every tune on there. It's just a very cohesive piece of art. All the music on there, and I love Edgar Winter and Johnny, and so yeah, it was tough to see that he's gone now, but for the music, just incredible stuff. I just actually got in the mail another copy this week, because I wanted a first edition.
Wow.
I'll take the jacket off. I wanted a first edition because, and a lot of people don't know this, but if you get the first edition or the one that's got the radio station code on the bottom for the promo records, those are all pressed off of the master, the promo. I haven't found a promo copy of this one yet. Although I want to. But again, I met Rick, and it's all because of this guitar, this Stratocaster. That's
iconic.
That's iconic, right? But so I still own this guitar today. I got this guitar It's actually at Rumble Seat Music in Nashville right now. It's always on display somewhere around the globe so people can enjoy it. Again, what's the sense of hoarding? I want these artifacts out in the world so everybody can enjoy them. So if you're in the Nashville area, go to Rumble Seat Music. It's there. The Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo Strat. So yeah, cool, just cool stuff.
Fantastic, Pete. When I finish this show with you, I'm going to go and make some lunch, and I'm going to listen to that album because it's been a while since I've listened to that album. But I agree with you, and I thoroughly have to endorse your comment there about guitars being available for people to see. You know, often we talk about this on this channel about Kurt Hammett taking Greenie out and playing Greenie, and letting people, if you're close enough to be close to him, wherever he is, he lets you play Greenie, you know. So, and he's proud of that fact. And then on our Facebook group that we have that's associated with this channel, often you get people saying, you know, that guitar needs to be in a museum. You know, that guitar, you know, and I have to be polite, you know, with my comments, Pete.
Yeah. Well, you know, Joe Bonamassa's like that too, where people will like Roy Gallagher's Strat. You know, Donald Gallagher loaned him the Strat to play in the show, and Alvin Lee's guitar that Joe's been able to play. All, you know, Big Red and all these iconic instruments. So yeah, I think this stuff should be out there getting played and circulated. And you know, if it's not, then again, what's the sense?
Yeah, you know, look, I agree with you, and as I say, if I'm ever lucky enough to be in a position to be backstage at a Metallica concert, which probably won't happen, but if I'm ever lucky enough, and I know if I ever say to Kurt, you know, I'm a Kiwi fan of yours and also the guitar you got, can I strum it, please? Yeah. You know,
I would too. I would never miss that opportunity.
But yeah, I agree with you with Rick Derringer, you know, and getting back to your point about these guys and girls, you know, getting older, you know, and Stevie Nicks, as an example, celebrated her 77th birthday 2 weeks ago, and we did a bit of a post on the channel. Look, you know, we are...
Christine, you know, I was lucky enough to see Fleetwood Mac's last tour with Mike Campbell on guitar. And Christy McVie was, you know, I mean, you know, what a magical band. You know, you can say, oh, you know, and of course, I love the Peter Green stuff. That's my favorite. But there's so many different incarnations of Fleetwood Mac. They're all great. They're all different, so you don't have to dig them all. But you know, just seeing them perform, and Stevie and Christy, and again, you know, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, the historic rhythm section. So I was so fortunate to catch that last tour, man. It was awesome. Can't say enough about it.
One of the albums of my summer, every summer, that I put on many times during the course of summer is the Rumours album by Fleetwood Mac. And over the last couple of years since they released that live album that they recorded in 1977, it's available on Spotify if you haven't checked it out. And it's a fantastic recording, Pete, because it's the recording of a band playing live while this album has just been dropped. Right. You know, so you're getting an immediate interpretation of this album. And the first time I sat and listened to it, I couldn't do anything for about an hour. I was giddy with excitement. It was just fantastic. Yeah. What a recording. Yeah. And I couldn't understand, Pete, why they didn't bring this out years ago.
Yeah, well, it's probably, as usual, it's probably some copyright laws that has to go with it. But yeah, absolutely. Just great stuff, you know. And while we're on the subject of Christine McVie, Christine Perfect, this just came in the mail today.
Oh,
from the UK. That's
69.
Fleetwood Mac in Finland, and this is the one, Christine McVie, Fleetwood Mac. there are some gems on this record. I was just listening to this before we went live because I had to hear it. And there, oh man, just incredible gems on there. And then I'm a chicken shacker too. So this is another one, Christine Perfect's Chicken Shack. So before she was Christy McVie, she was Christine Perfect. So
100%.
These are just brand new records that just came out, I think 2 weeks ago, and I think Simon had posted, and that's why I got them in the mail today.
Fantastic, brilliant. We need to check those out. But Chicken Shack again, an incredible band, and Christine's contribution to that. And again, you know, it's interesting when you talk to people who are what we call on the channel normie Fleetwood Mac fans, you know, that only know the 77 version of Fleetwood Mac. And when you say to them, you know, or have conversations with people, and this happens, you know, on a semi-regular basis, when you say to people, you know, that Christine was playing in a blues band, it's like, wow, you know, and Fleetwood Mac was a blues band beforehand. It's like, oh wow, yeah. People have no idea, Pete, and it's like, okay. We've just evangelized somebody,
right? Well, that's what put Christine Perfect on the map, and how she got into the Fleetwood Mac, because she was in Chicken Shack, and Stan had turned her on to some iconic blues records, especially the Freddie King stuff with the pianist on there, and that's where Christine learned all that blues stuff. And she was a quick study, and she really, I mean, she's singing Etta James on those early Chicken Shack albums, and she's killing it. So she's another one not to be overlooked. You know, she had a heck of a career even before the 77 Fleetwood Mac version that we know. I mean, the stuff that she did in Kiln House and Heroes, and I'm a Bob Welch fan too. I mean, that's when they started to get poppy. But again, if it wasn't for Bob, there would have been no 77 Fleetwood Mac incarnation. And Bob wrote some incredible music in the 70s. The second show I ever went to as a teenager was Dave Mason and Bob Welch. And man, what an impact that had on me. So don't just think of one Fleetwood Mac. If you go back and listen to these records, and they're all different, so you got to kind of be open-minded about it. There are just incredible gems on every album.
15 incarnations of Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
So there's
and
there's
even
a lot of
Mason
history.
played guitar in Fleetwood Mac for a stint there too.
But I agree with you. I think one of the great things about Christine McVie is, you know, that she's going to have the title of, you know, England's Queen of the Blues, you know, just an incredible performer and songwriter. We've got some great comments in here before we move the conversation on. So Bob's saying that the average price in the USA for a ticket's $140 US. So that's about 350, 400 Kiwi dollars. So that's about right. That's the average price for
cheap seat.
Yeah, for a cheap seat. Yeah. Standing Stones is saying Dr. John did a show for an FM station, and they charged $1.04 admission. Fantastic. And he's also making a comment here about early Savoy Brown for me, 100%. A step further with Chris Yalden, produced by Mike Vernon, who also did Fleetwood Mac stuff.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. And then, as our friend Bob is saying, you know, there's going to be some news about Savoy Brown and Kim Simmons soon. So when that information becomes available to us, we'll let you know here on this channel too. So hit that notification button, folks, if you haven't already. And another good friend of ours from the States, Steve Snyder's in the chat. G'day, Steve. Good to see you, bro. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
Say hi to Dad for me. Mission RD100, a good friend of ours. Bare Trees, another good album.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So good to see vinyl is making a resurgence. I suppose this is probably a good opportunity for us to talk about your project. I've been lucky, folks, over the last couple of weeks to be privy to some music that Pete has been, got in the can for an upcoming album that our channel will keep.
It's been in the can a long time.
Yeah. So I've been privy to that information, hearing that, and look, if you're interested in this kind of music, I suggest you go out there and grab that, and we'll keep you informed about developments with Pete's project. When the album is released, we're going to have a release party here on the channel, and we're going to have a bit of fun. We'll get Bob, Pete, Brad, and hopefully the Rock Professor, and anyone else that might be interested in jumping on. But give us an update, Pete, on your on the status of your album, please.
Well, and back in the late '80s and throughout the '90s, early 2000, I played drums also, and I was playing drums in a band called Mother Root, and we were basically the #1 call band in the Chicago area for backup spot for bands like Deep Purple, Grand Funk, Molly Hatchet, Robin Trower, the Dixie Dregs. It's just it's endless. Joe Walsh. So anyway, we were pretty successful regionally, and we were working on a record, and that was 1999 through 2000, and and then of course everybody goes their separate ways, and the album was getting worked on by the original engineer and producer Danny Schaefer from Velvet Shirt Studios in Chicago, and it just never got completed. There were some mixes from back then, but they kind of sounded dated, and we never did anything with it because the band had basically split up. But this year we got all the master tapes out and the reel-to-reel stuff and baked them. When Danny went back into the studio, and we just started remixing everything, and it just sounds wonderful. We couldn't be happier with it. It sounds better than it ever did before. And we've had people clamoring to hear these recordings for decades now. So we figured it's just time to get on it, and we're going to actually do some vinyl pressings of this too, and we hope to have it out by the end of the summer. The album is called Debts, and the band is called Mother Root, and the primary players in it, my brother Michael Flynn, and he wrote the majority of it, and he's one of the lead guitarists, and then Pat Fleming from Chicago, another iconic, incredible Chicago guitar player. Been working with Pat on and off since middle school, since about 6th or 7th grade. And Pat wrote a song on there too. There's a couple covers. And then Tony Root on bass, and our lead vocalist, Steve Taylor from Dayton, Ohio, who went on to do a lot of commercial stuff and actually did the McDonald's "I'm Loving It" jingle. And then myself on drums. If you are into Zeppelin, Free, Bad Company, Mountain, Government Mule, any of that kind of Cream, any of that kind of stuff, the people who have heard it in the industry have said that this is the greatest rock album that never was. So now it's going to be. So yeah, I sent you some material to listen to, and to chew on, and hopefully you're digging it. And we're just really excited we will have a Mother Root YouTube channel. We'll get that up and going soon, and we'll get some cuts on there. And I don't know if we're going to do a CD, because we'll probably just have it streaming, and then we'll do vinyl.
100%. And from what I've heard, people that like exactly what Pete has said. If you like this kind of music, that this channel's all about, you won't be disappointed. And I'll definitely be putting my hand up for a vinyl. So keep me in the loop there, please, Pete.
Yeah.
And it's an exciting time, obviously, and I'm sure once it's released, there'll be a sense of accomplishment there. Finally, Pete.
Yeah. Well, we think it's such a great piece of work that it's something, personally you want to leave some sort of a musical legacy behind. I mean, we did a lot of stuff back in the late 70s and 80s in my drumming career, and I played with drums with Toe Diddley, and I've done a lot of stuff drumming wise, but as far as to me, this is I think my best work as a drummer, and the best recording of it. So yeah, I'm proud to release it, and it will be part of my legacy. So yeah, I couldn't be happier about
it. I'm going to ask you a question. So you're trained as a drummer. You've played live and recorded as a drummer.
Yeah.
How has that helped you in your development as a guitar player? Would you be the guitar player today if you weren't a drummer?
Well, yeah, I certainly wouldn't be the musician I am today if I weren't a drummer, because I do play bass, I do sing, I play guitar, I play drums. Drums wasn't the first thing on my radar. I mean, like most kids growing up, in the whole, the whole impact. I mean, Hendrix was like the big thing. Like when I saw Hendrix in Monterey, and the whole, it's like, wow, that was it for me. And I wanted to play guitar, but in our neighborhood, there was already 2 guitar players, a bass player, and guess what? No drummer. So somebody had to man the throne. So I got picked to do that, whether I liked it or not. And I just always had an ear for guitar. And back then we didn't have tuning devices, and we didn't have strobe tuners. I had a pretty good ear. So even being the drummer in the band, the guitar players would hand me their guitars to tune them because I think maybe we had a pitch pipe at best. So I just always sort of had a knack for it, and I just love it. But what I learned, being a drummer and holding the rhythm section down and learning to work with, bass players, it's like anything else. You can say, oh, what a great band. And it's always the focus is on the guitar player or the lead vocal. It's just like, yeah, but if you stripped away, again, if you stripped away the Stan Lynch and all these guys, what do you have? You've got nothing. You have to have a great rhythm section. And since I was tuned into the guitar, it just helped me learn what other people were doing, and it helps you to have a better musical vocabulary when you understand what the other musicians are doing in your band. And even with Petty Union, I was very focused on the keyboard stuff. I had to know all parts of this band, bringing musicians in, and I even knew when our keyboardist, if Rick was doing like, what is that? That's not what you're supposed to be playing. Oh no, that's what you're and then we'd listen to the recording. Oh, you're right. How did you hear that? Well, again, you start to pick things apart, and you as musician, you really can hear. You can be playing in the band, whatever your position is, and focus on what one person is doing, and not even listen to what else is going on around you. That's what really helps you if you're play more than one instrument, is you just can totally respond and also appreciate what somebody else is doing. And then it just helps you lock in. I've always been the type of musician, it's certainly not about how many notes you can play, no matter what instrument. That's all great. And having the theory and the vocabulary and being a shredder is I totally respect that and honor it. But it's always, to me, it's what does it take to make great music? It's always about the song. And you're always told that as a studio musician too. It's like, don't go in there with your ego. What can you give? What can you make what part can you give to the song to make it the best song it can be? It's not about your performance. It's about what you do with your performance to make great music. So I've always said, there's always 12 notes, and we can, all right, so everybody can play them. What is your intention? So I think it's all part of that fabric you're talking about. Is that I certainly learned that, as I moved on to other instruments and stuff. And I'm always trying to, when I listen to our drummer, Mike Jeffrey, he is just in the pocket all the time and never budges. And he sets the tempo, he sets the groove. And it really, I have to keep reminding myself, listen to Mike, listen to Mike, listen to Mike. He's got it. He's in the pocket. You can't go wrong. And that's where the music is being made. So it's a big part of it. And you've got to get your ego out of it to make great music and be productive in that way.
Yeah, I have to agree with you from my limited perspective too. I play with a couple of guys, here in town as well. We get together on a semi-regular basis. I like you. I taught myself to play the bass guitar. I'm a Jack Bruce nut. I just love Jack Bruce and Andy Fraser. I just love them. And I wanted to play like them. So so they're my go-to bass players. Just quickly off the top of my head, Pete. And I remember talking to a local celebrity, that was in a band here, a couple of bands here in New Zealand and here in my hometown, and we were talking about bass players in a conversation, and he said, we were talking. He said some of the greatest producers in the history of rock and roll were bass players, and he rattled off a couple of names, John Paul Jones, etc. And and I remember saying, "Well, why do you think that is?" And
because
Tim
they know the foundation of a great song.
That's right. And Tim said, "Well, Andrew, bass players, as an example, a bass player has to listen to everybody, that's going on, whereas a guitar player generally isn't really interested in what other elements are going on in the band, just generally speaking." But I got where the conversation was going. I thought, and you know what, when I started applying myself to the bass, I knew exactly what the conversation was about. You're hearing things a lot differently than I think I would have if I was just, completely, focused on the guitar, Pete.
Yeah. And there's so many great bass players. And again, let's just take Ron Blair. Again, it's just one of those things I just took for granted. Like, okay, he's the bass player in the Heartbreakers, but he was also a guitar player. That's where he started. Tom Petty was a guitar player before he was a bass player, before Mudcrutch. And if you haven't heard the Mudcrutch records, man, they are just as good as any Heartbreakers record. And that's Tom playing bass. So these guys, again, they understood more than just one aspect of being in a band. And I think that's what lent, Jack Bruce, I mean, what a virtuoso. He wasn't just holding down the root all the time. And did that cause some problems with Clapton sometimes in Cream? Because Jack was, keeping up with Eric's guitar playing. Yeah, but then you can't have such an incredible virtuoso at the same time, but he also knew how to stay in the pocket and play on top of that too. So, there's just a lot of great bass players who are guitar players too. So it helps to understand. And does that make them a different type of bass player? I think it does, but I don't think it's, for the worse. I think sometimes it's for the better.
From my perspective, just to finish this conversation off that we're having on bass players and their role. And Bob's got another great comment here. You know, Peter Green started off as a bass player too. You know, another great example of bass players making a transition. But one thing that I've noticed, and I realized this when I was learning to play open G, Keith Richards stuff, open G, and the bass as well. What it forced me to do as a guitar player, it actually forced me to hang back a bit, Pete, because I always, when I was a guitar player and playing, always wanted to rush. I always wanted to get somewhere quick, you know. But when you're playing open G, because you have to play a little bit behind the notes sometimes, or the beat, you know, and also with the bass, it's actually, you know, it's good for your development. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You can't rush as a guitar player.
Yeah. Well, you know, being grown up in the Chicago area and frequenting the blues clubs, you know, which is where my heart was from the get-go. I mean, everybody was, you know, you got to play behind the beat. You're rushing, you know, you're being too white, you know, let's face it, you know. So, and I certainly learned that touring with Wayne Baker Brooks, you know, and I was playing with Michael Jackson's drummer on that tour, and he was always reining me in, you know. It was certainly a lesson again in the pocket and the groove, even as being a drummer. It's like, when, you know, that's the other problem. You get there on the stage, you know, for me as a guitarist, and it's like the adrenaline kicks in. It's like, it's like letting the horse out of the stable. Like, whoa, you've got to be conscious about time and about feel.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's just a runaway train.
You know? Look, I'm intrigued about, you know, the Chicago blues aspect, you know, of your development too, because, you know, that's fundamental, isn't it, to the music, you know, that we follow. The Chicago blues guys especially, and their influence on these giants, you know, that we've just mentioned before, you know, cannot be underestimated. For me, for me personally, you know, I got Robert Johnson. I got that, you know, when Clapton and Keith Richards were talking about Robert Johnson. You know, I'm talking about in my mid to late teens, you know, when I was had opportunities to listen to Robert Johnson. I didn't quite get it, Pete. I didn't quite get it. It wasn't until I heard Muddy Waters playing, you know, his hollow bodies through little amps and his slide, and just getting that aggression, you know, with Jimmy Reed and also Babyface Leroy, you know, what wasn't until that early sort of Chicago blues scene where I got it. You know, it was an aggressive, rather than guys just playing Delta blues loud. They were definitely going for that aggressive edge, Pete.
Well, not only that, but when you listen to Muddy, or you listen to you know, even a British guy's interpretation of a Robert Johnson song, it's pretty much 4/4. It all gets put together, okay, as a band. So when so for me, it's like, okay, now I know these Robert Johnson songs. Go back and listen to the Robert Johnson recording, which again, like you, I had to do this several times, and then I started trying to play some of the stuff. Oh, that's an odd turnaround. That's an odd meter. You know, that phrase is hung in there, you know, just one more bar than you're typically, you know, your 8-bar, 12-bar blues. Like, what is that extra bar doing? So this is the one thing about Robert Johnson, is that when you're listening to it, it's one thing. When you're attempting to play it, it's another. Then you start to understand it a lot better, because then I thought, oh, well, okay, well, let me play this. Oh, I can't play this. You know, it's certainly not your typical blues, because Robert wasn't he wasn't restricted in the fact that he had to play with a bass player and a drummer or a pianist or anybody else. It was just him. So he developed a way of if he was going for a turnaround, he might reach for a note in the turnaround while he's still in the verse, or vice versa, to make the song sound like it's going somewhere, even though he hasn't played that. It was more of an inferred note or inversion in the verse before he even got to the chorus. He was the most brilliant at that, playing inferred melodies and things because he was a solo artist. And I think he was the first guy to develop that because he didn't have somebody else to help him along with that. So he was, I think, the most brilliant as a solo artist in that regard. So when I started, I saw Muddy Waters. I mean, I was lucky. I really was able to by the late 70s, go see, Lonnie Brooks and Luther Allison, Muddy Waters, and Buddy Guy back in the day, Junior Wells at the Checkerboard, all the iconic clubs and places. We were just so lucky to see these artists, Eddie Clearwater, and I mean, it just, the list is endless, the influences. But it was like anything else, when I was turned on to the blues, it was probably first, besides maybe Red House on the UK version of Are You Experienced. Then it was Johnny Winter and more of the white players. But then you look at oh, well, who wrote that song? Well, it wasn't Johnny. Okay, now I got to find out who that artist is. And that's what, brought me into the whole Chicago blues scene, is like, oh, that guy wrote that song. Hey, he's still alive. I got to go see him. So you, like anything else, you go back to the roots, if you can. And I was lucky enough to be there and see it all.
Oh, 100%. And, there's some great comments in here. Mission, the Little Walters, Key to the Highway still blows them away. The way that they were getting breakup on those early amps, the Muddy Waters stuff, and around 1950, it's remarkable that they were, on these little amps getting that beautiful breakup, but clear treble coming through as well. Yeah. And these guys recording, these guys at the time didn't really know what they were doing. They were recording what they were hearing. There were no guys in white coats like Clapton and John Mayall in '66 saying, you got to turn it down. You can't, the meter is going too high, Pete. It was, these guys were putting the mics and going, yep, they were recording exactly what they were listening to, that these guys were playing live.
Yeah, pretty much like what was happening at Sun with Elvis and all these cats. It's like, all right, there's one microphone in a room, what have you. Well, this is the guitar I have. This is the amp I have. Go, There wasn't a selection of things. And that's what made it so
which is remarkable. Yeah. And you can't underestimate, that stuff. You're right there, Pete. The Elvis at Sun Studios is just classic. It's iconic. Those recordings.
I had a '50s band for many years, and I remember when we got a new bass player, and it's a young whippersnapper from Nashville. And he's like, we were in rehearsals and we're doing an Elvis tune. And he's just like, man, I don't know if I can play this jive. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah. I said, all right, I want you to go home and listen to the Sun recordings.
Yes.
So what I want you to realize is that in our rehearsal space here, we have the best equipment: drums, microphones, guitars, amplifiers. These cats had nothing. It's stripped down. It's an upright bass. It's an acoustic guitar. It's a Scotty Moore on a crude amplifier. Same thing you're talking about. It's a percussion player playing brushes on a snare. That's all they had. And they just made this mind-blowing sounding music. So, when this guy had come back the next week, he was just like, man, I had no idea. I said, so here we are with all this modern equipment, trying to make it sound even somewhat like this stuff is. And we couldn't do it. I was like, so that's how brilliant these guys were as artists, as musicians. They knew their craft, and that's why it was so damn good. It's because it wasn't, oh, I got the fanciest guitar and I've had all these, it's just like Elvis. I mean, yeah, he was a white guy trying to make it, selling black music, so to speak. And I know he got some slack for that, but he didn't make it because he didn't have talent. He did have an innate, way of singing and to do things, to bring things out. He was a great artist, man. And I think that, again, whether it's Chuck, even Chuck Berry in the early recordings, and these guys were just brilliant. They were so good at their craft. Didn't matter what mics they were using, what preamps in the studio, none of that stuff. It was their complete conviction and their personality is that what made great music.
I have to echo your sentiments there, Pete, because I totally agree with you. I think it's just incredible, and it's one of the pleasures that we have on this channel. We can spend sometimes 2 hours talking about some of these great recordings that you're talking about, where guys and girls have just gone in, plugged in, and away you go. There's no 4 weeks of trying to get the drum mic'd. There was none of that.
No, it was either you had it, you had your stuff together, or you were gone. And this is the one thing, man. There's so many incredible young musicians, artists, whatever you want to call them, virtuosos on YouTube, right? There's all these shredders. But man, the one thing that's missing is the musicality. And again, I've always said, what is your intention? We can all play the same notes, but if you have no intention behind it and you really don't put your heart and soul into it, you're not making music. And this is what we're talking about. All these artists we talk about on your program, and they're all about that. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I'm sorry to bore listeners who may have heard me mention this many times on the channel, but I think it's just a perfect illustration. The guy, Ken, who produced the Rumours album, came out in 2012 with a wonderful book, Making Rumours, and his attention to detail in that publication, Pete. He knows all the mics. If you want a music book without details, don't read that book, because this book is all about those details. And for guys like us who want to know that shit, love it, because he's obviously lucid, so he can remember. But there's an interesting point where he talks about, because he was this hotshot young producer, that was brought in to record, this version of Fleetwood Mac's second album, after Fleetwood Mac. And they're sitting around, and he's on his 4th or 5th day of trying to record the drums. He's setting up these mics and all that. And, Lindsey Buckingham's sort of sitting there scratching his long locks going, what's going on? And, Christine's sort of looking, saying, it's 3 or 4 days now. What's going on? And it wasn't until he came into the studio where Mick and John McVie were playing together that he realized, I can't mic this drum separately without the bass player, because that's where the music's being created, Pete.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, you can have the best microphones and mic pre's and technique. Are you making music? You've got to find out where that is, because that's the magic. Everybody's talking, well, where's the magic? Yeah, it takes work. Magic is the work you put into it. You have to know where that lies in order to make great music.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Boy, it's been a great conversation. We haven't spoken, Pete, about your pickup business on the stream. We've mentioned it before when you've been on the channel before, but another big part of who Pete Flynn is as a musician and a band leader, folks, is if you're not aware that Pete is a pickup builder and a luthier. More recently, you reached a lot of people's attention, deservedly so, because you built a set of pickups for a guy called Joe Bonamassa, Pete.
I did. Yeah. I got into the pickup business, and again, being a luthier, a guitar tech, I've been doing this for 43 years. I had a lot of repairs over the years with dead pickups, guitars with dead pickups in them. And then I'd send them out to Seymour Duncan, and Seymour got so busy he couldn't do the rewinds anymore. And then they went to Cesar Diaz, and then Cesar got busy because he was Bob Dylan's guitar tech and Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar tech. And then they went back to Seymour Duncan, and then they went to Lindy Fralin. And I've met a lot of great people in the guitar pickup business in the industry. And it just got to the point where I had sent a lap steel pickup out to be rewound, and it took 9 months. Now, nobody wants to live without their guitar for 9 months. So I figured I better learn how to do rewinds myself. So that's how that started. And then one thing led to another. When I was doing, the Petty Union Band, I had a December 1950 Fender Broadcaster because Mike Campbell used a Broadcaster on most of the iconic Heartbreaker recordings. So I built a clone of that guitar to take out to gig with, and I had several different pickups in there. And by the fifth set of pickups I had in there, I just threw up my hands. I was like, these don't sound like an original 1950 Broadcaster. So I started to do that myself, and I think by the third set of Broadcaster pickups I made, I had what I felt I had nailed the original 1950 Broadcaster sound. So that's where it all started, was those pickups and this guitar. This is the clone of my December 50 Broadcaster, and it's got a lot of miles on it now. It's my main guitar. Wow. My main guitar for the last 15 years now. And these are the pickups. So it started with these, and then I went on to do the PAFs, because everybody wants a great sounding PAF, which is what you'd hear in the Clapton Beano recordings. Jimmy Page, Paul Kossoff, the list is endless with the famous 1959 Burst.
Sure.
So once I did that, I sent a set out to Frankie Sullivan of Survivor, who's the guy who co-wrote Eye of the Tiger. And Frankie's got an immense guitar collection of incredible, almost mint pieces, just kind of like Bonamassa, but a lot of stuff that's mint, unplayed museum pieces. And Frankie's a huge PAF nut. And I'd sent him a set of my PAFs, and he was the first guy to say, Pete, you cracked the code. These actually sound like vintage PAFs. And again, nothing against all the other pickup builders out there. All these pickups sound great. Doesn't matter who you pick, but do they sound like actual vintage guitar pickups? And that was the one thing that Joe had said to me too, that Joe B had picked up on. He played all these guitars I brought for him and Josh Smith. Josh has been using my pickups, and that's how Joe heard about them. And when I brought all these guitars, Joe had played them, and he was just like, wow, man, your PAFs. And I said, well, he's like, well, all your pickups sound like vintage pickups. I'm like, well, that's the key. That's what's been missing, and all these decades of these clones and reissues and replicas, so to speak, So I think I've touched on something that, that nobody else has figured out yet. So I've got a secret in the recipe of how the pickup is wound. It's in the windings. You have to have all the correct materials and all that. And I've had to source my own stuff and had my own stuff made from the ground up, like base plates and covers and things. And you got to have all that stuff. But the real magic and how to reproduce a actual vintage guitar pickup is in the windings itself.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here from a guy who certainly knows what he's talking about and has the endorsements from people who certainly know what they're talking about. So again, I want to make it clear to you, if you are watching on a replay and you want to check out how to get hold of Pete, it's easy peasy Japanesey. It's PickUps by Pete Flynn.
It's Pete A. Flynn.
Pete A. Flynn. Pete A. Flynn.
You gotta have the A in there, like the initials PAF, like
PAF. PAF. And we'll attach that link directly on this video as we share it on our social media links. So if you're after a set of pickups that are going to replicate an era or a tone for you, we ask you please to check Pete out, and I'm sure he'll do a deal for you.
Everything's hand wound, and if you want something that's different, I'll custom make a pickup for you. Also, doesn't have to be some stock something or other.
Brilliant, even better. So we'll be sharing that, Pete, on our social media links. It's the least that we can do. It's one of the things that we have pride of place here on the channel, is sharing our friends' businesses, projects, and social media links. Now, you've got some guitars there. You showed us a Telecaster. Can I isolate you, and do you want to show us some guitars?
Well,
is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people think when I'm doing the Tom Petty tribute band that I'm showboating. You'll see a lot of my social media posts with what I call the rack attack. It's my rack of guitars that I have. Oh, well, nobody needs that many guitars. Well, Tom Petty and Mike Campbell, they had a lot of guitars, and it wasn't just because they love guitars. Of course they did, and I do too. But it was because of the different tunings, the different tones they were looking for. You can't replicate a Bird song without a Rickenbacker. So this is why they had all these guitars on tour with them. It's no different in our band. Mike Redman, our Tom Petty, and Mike Redman was from the band Off Broadway. He's a Chicago icon. He's got a rack of guitars too. And again, the reasons are, so 90% or 80% of the Petty stuff is done on my broadcaster. Just like Mike Campbell did. And then, what we try. Oh, this is my double neck Rickenbacker. This guitar I actually built with a friend of mine who's another luthier, because Rickenbackers, the 12 string has the same nut width as the 6 string, and it's hard to cram your fingers in there. And I didn't like that. I didn't want that. I wanted a regular electric 12 string nut width. So went ahead and built the 6 string neck on here is a direct copy replica of my 59 Les Paul Sunburst neck, because I love that. And then the 12 string is actually a replica, and the width and the shape from a Dan Electro 12 string that I had.
Wow.
So I just put all that together, and that's so the reason I play this is that unlike the Heartbreakers, they could take liberty with the material that they wrote when they played it live. They didn't do it like the studio version most of the time. They kind of went off on different tangents with the material. Since we're replicating the material, I needed to have a guitar that I could do the 12 string parts on, and then do the solos and what have you on the 6 string. Again, referencing back what we talked to earlier in the show, that some of these tracks have 7 guitar parts in them. So between Mike Redman and myself, we're trying to replicate all that live. So it's very hard to do. So I jump between the double neck and the 6 string and play both of them, on any given song. Listen to Her Heart, things like that.
Understood. Makes perfect sense.
So when I'm not, so I do about 5 songs on the double neck, and it's not a light guitar. So I also have a Rickenbacker. This is called a 1993 Plus. Some of you might know it as the Pete Townsend model because it has the Rose Morris import F-hole. This is what the Rickenbackers that were sent to Europe, that the Beatles and the Who and everybody used. They didn't get the cat eye Rickenbacker that the United States had. They got the F-hole in it. So this is called a 1993 Plus, and the Plus stands for this is the only Rickenbacker model 12 string that has the wider nut like I have on my double neck.
Wow.
I do about 4 songs on that one. Then next is my Gretsch, and this is what I use for Into the Great Wide Open, which has some slide parts on it, and a couple other tunes that have slide. This is standard tuning that I use slide on. So the action's a bit higher than my broadcaster, so I can play slide on it, but slide in standard tuning. Then I have for slide, that's an open G with a double G bottom. I use my 1957 Les Paul Jr. This thing's got a lot of miles on it too.
Wow. Wow.
And the action's kind of jacked up a little higher on this one. So the only song this is used for is I Won't Back Down. So this is, again, tune the G with a double G bottom on it for slide. So yeah, I have to haul a bunch of guitars around even for one song. and occasionally, depending on the venue, I'll leave the 57 Junior at home and I'll use this is a 2017 SG standard that is open tuning also for that same song.
Beautiful. Then
there's 2 songs that I use tremolo on. So I use my Jazz Master, and then this one's got my pickups in it. The broadcast.
What songs do you use though? That Jazz Master on, Pete?
This one is, there's so many, and we just had the gig last night, but there's so many songs I can't even remember the titles of.
Sure.
You Got Lucky. See if if I play the song, I'll remember. That's what I use the Jazz Master for. And then, of course, there's Don't Come Around Here No More. You have to have a sitar to do that.
Uh-huh.
And so at the tail end of Don't Come Around Here No More, I actually switched guitars because then there's a solo at the end of that. So while I'm in the middle of, and I'm also singing in that song with the girls, I have to midstream change from the sitar, which is tuned to F, by the way.
Wow.
They did not capo that song because the producer they did it in E, but then the producer wanted to hear Tom sing it a half step up, and then they decided to sing it in F, and the producer liked Tom's voice in F. But they got to the point where no, the capo's not working, so they actually tuned the guitar up a half step to F.
Okay.
That's how they got that iconic sound in that song. So my Firebird, my Inverness Green Firebird 5, I switched midstream in that song to do the solo at the end of it. Then we segue right into You Wreck Me, because that song is also an F. So that's the dual purpose for that. Then there's a couple songs. There's my Hamer Standard.
Beautiful.
1978. This is number 94. And then I play It's Good to Be King, and a couple more tunes on this one because it's just got that sound for those songs. So I have to have 7 guitars minimum to do the Tom Petty tribute gig. Sometimes I'll have 9, depending, on the material. If we're doing a 3-hour or a 3-set gig, I'll have 9 guitars with me. But typically on a 2-hour set, it's 7 guitars.
So I just want to remind folks that the tribute band that Pete's in is a band that's trying their best to replicate the music off the albums. They're not a party band where they're just going out there doing covers.
Right.
And there's plenty of bands out there that do that kind of stuff, that they just want people to dance to and get drunk. But your gig, Pete's about trying to be as near close to the recordings and Pete's explained to you the reason why he has to have 7 to 9 guitars. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, we're trying to honor the music as best we can. Everybody knows it. Like last night, you know, in Chicago, everybody's singing along. You got thousands of people singing along. They all know the music, so you know, that's what we want to give to them. You know, so it's just as much a treat and as fulfilling. You know, when we're up there playing and we get that kind of feedback from the audience. There's nothing like it. You know, it's incredible.
So for all the guitar players out there, you've just been treated to some wonderful guitar candy here on the channel. I noticed there was one thing that was consistent with a lot of your guitars was a red pick. So would you like to tell and talk to guitar players, because we like talking about picks, Pete. Picks are important. So can you elaborate on the Pete Flynn pick, please?
I use a Dunlop Jazz 3, the pointy one.
Yes.
Not the, you know, the rounder edge one. Because the Dunlop lettering is raised on it, so it gives you a little bit more of a grip, but it's still not enough for my clumsiness. So I actually, and I know you're probably not going to see this on the screen, maybe if I tilt it enough, but I actually take a razor blade and I scribe in there like a tic-tac-toe board, and then I go crossways on it to get even more of a grip out of it. So that's what I use in all my guitars. So if I drop one and I lose it, all the guitars have one.
I have to agree with you. I use that same pickup a lot. Pick a lot. More often than not, I'm finding myself, instead of using that point there now, a lot of my playing, I'm using the rounded, the rounded. Yeah. But it's a lovely little pick. Guys and girls either love them or hate them, because yeah. You'll either love them or hate them.
Yeah, because they're so stiff too. There's no give to them. So yeah. But yeah, and I use a lot of the side of the pick too, because when I started playing guitar, being again a Hendrix nut, that's how I developed that. So it's taken me a while to change my technique enough to play all the petty
stuff. Bob's made a comment here. Pete, don't forget, people still get drunk and dance at Petty Union gigs.
They do. They do. Yeah, the city of Chicago last night. Yeah, that was happening for
sure. Pete, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you and talking to you about your projects and your passion. It won't be the last time that you're going to be on the channel. Please keep us up to date with your release. We'd love to host a party on the channel here. When you finally get to do that, let me know, because I'd love to put an order in for the vinyl. Folks, what I've heard, what I've been blessed to receive from Pete, you won't be disappointed, and we will include, when Pete gives us that information, links for you to pick all that up. But you know, let's support our friends' music.
And don't forget pettyunion.com. Also, you can see all of our petty stuff. There's videos up there too, so check it out.
Can you remind me later to make sure, send me a quick note on Messenger to include that when I go through and edit this, because I may forget that. Pete, if you can remind me to do that, because I'm sure people would love to go and check out what you're doing, because, you know, Tom Petty's music, the Heartbreakers, you know, great music. Mike Campbell's biography has just enhanced that music. You know, that classic album series that they did with Damn the Torpedoes, one of the best that they recorded on that classic album series.
Yeah.
And Mike and Tom are just are so giving on that documentary, aren't they?
Yeah. You know, the other thing too, with all you blues cats out there, like we are, you got to listen to the Tom Petty and Heartbreakers album Mojo. I mean, man, does that record have the mojo. It's one of my favorites, period.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, Brad and I did a show. We did a show a couple of shows ago on the channel, talking about Tom Petty and Mike Campbell. And I mentioned that there was a period where I wasn't listening to Tom Petty because he wasn't producing anything. There was nothing there for a while. And then when Mojo came out, and there was a discussion about this Les Paul, this 59 Les Paul being a. Oh, I got to listen to that, Pete.
Right, absolutely. And speaking of that, because of that Les Paul, Mike's Les Paul, he likes it a little more on the mid-rangey trebly end, not a really dark, beefy sounding Les Paul, because again, they're playing more jingle jangly stuff, So I actually gave Mike Campbell, he's got a set of my PAFs too, to put in his reissue Les Paul that he tours with. He's also got a set of my Firebird pickups, and his guitar player, Chris Holt. I don't know if you heard this, Andrew. He's now in the Eagles. So he was just at the Sphere with Joe Walsh, and there's some video of both of them out there playing Hotel California. And if you don't know who Chris Holt is out there in music land, Chris actually was Don Henley's guitar player, and then that's how he got the gig with Mike Campbell, because he's a guitar player and an incredible harmony singer and a pianist. That's how he got the gig in Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs after Jason Sine went out to produce to tour his solo record. And now Chris is in the Eagles. So he's in the Eagles and he's playing with the Dirty Knobs. And Chris is using my Jazzmaster pickups and my PAF pickups. So, it's all circular.
Well, I'll tell you what, if anybody is playing in Don Henley's band and with Joe Walsh, these guys, while they are, relaxed musicians to a point, they are supremely demanding of musicians in their bands, and they always have been, Pete. You've got to be a good cat to get a gig in their band.
If you're playing in the Eagles, you're one of the stellar musicians, and Chris Holt is. I've seen him twice, with Mike Campbell, because I met all those guys, when we were doing the pickup thing last year. And man, Chris is a super, super great guy, and his latest solo album just got launched last week. So go to Chris Holt Music. You got to check him out too, man. He's an amazing artist.
Well, yeah, we'd love to. And Mike, if you ever want to come on the channel, and Chris, if you ever want to come on and hang out with some organic fans that genuinely love your music, and that might get starstruck,
Yeah. I still
just incredible guys. And I just have to echo your point, Pete, about Mike Campbell. The way that he comes across on social media is just a humble guy. And so do you, Pete. So do you. You've been on our channel 3 times now, and it's been a privilege to have you on our channel and just, talk about this music, that we love, because, without it, brother, without it, I wouldn't be here.
No, me neither. It's what makes the world go around, in my opinion. At least mine.
Thank you, Pete, for hanging out with us. I'm going to let you get some rest. I know that last night you were gigging. I'm going to do a quick shout out to Bob, who's been with us right from the beginning of the chat. And it's Bob that brought you and I together. So, that's one of the great things about social media. You meet some cool cats and they introduce you to some other cool cats. And
Bob's got two new books coming out soon, so we'll let you know about that too.
Oh yeah, 100%. We'll definitely be letting you know. So we're all about sharing that information, folks. So there's a lot of good stuff coming. Fleetwood Mac documentary, a new Cream biography, Bob's 2 new projects. Richard Orlando is working on his Danny Kerwin biography. He'll probably do. Yeah, yeah. Look at that. Oh,
I
I'm going
just
to
got
isolate
this in
you.
the mail last week too. Speaking of Richard Orlando, you have to get
Yes.
that. I love that Burns Peter Green stuff right there.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So thank you, Phil, for hanging out with us live. Good to see you. Mission RD100 as ever joining us. It's been a pleasure. Standing Stones, thank you for joining us. And we had at the top of the show, we had Steve-O watching us. At one point, we had about 10 or 15 people watching us. Mark Moldwin, who said that he's got 7 sets of your pickups already. So he's a fan. Thank you for hanging out with us. And a good friend of ours, a dear brother to the channel, Nelson Rodriguez. If you're watching on replay, we do appreciate you taking some time out of your life and picking this show to entertain you for an hour and a half. Please go and support all our friends who I'll attach social media links in the description and let them know that the 5150 show sent you. I'm going to be back here on the channel and through probably 5 hours with the Rock Professor and Brad. We're going to be talking about some Stratocaster Masters, Pete. We're going to be talking about Rory Gallagher. We're going to be talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan, and we're going to be talking about one of the Chicago Blues greats, Buddy Guy.
Awesome.
So, we love it. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, guys. Thank everybody out there.
Awesome. Don't go away, Pete. I'm going to play the last video, and I'll talk to you soon. So don't go anywhere, Pete.
Got it.
Thank you, everyone.